Well, I'm not going to do what Trump does. Video. Now, some of you may have not received the news that Chris Murphy cannot come. He is in Washington for obvious reasons and is not able to be with us. However, he did a video for us. So he cares, and I think I'd rather have him in Washington doing the good deeds that he's doing. And he, as many of you know, has backed Jahana from the get-go, and thinks that she is one of the great rising stars, which she is. And as you will see, for those who may not have heard her in August, when she did a kind of Q&A with Mary Glassman. And I think the result came out in the Salisbury Sharon vote, where she clearly got a lot of votes as a result from our area. Second, Austin Noble is here from Fight Back Connecticut. Why don't you come up and show your face? I'll let him explain Fight Back Connecticut, which is an organization that Chris Murphy started. So it's another way to volunteer.
Yeah, so a lot of you may know about us. Chris Murphy kind of started this, I think about a year. Sorry, I'm not used to microphones. But he started this maybe about a year and a half ago, and now it's sort of for better purposes, been like kind of absorbed by the state party. So basically, Fight Back Connecticut, we are the state federal coordinated campaign. So, we're not just identifying for Chris, we're out there whenever we're knocking doors, making calls, wherever it may be, so we're knocking doors trying to identify voters for Chris, for Jahana, for, the whole slate of candidates. So, if you're ever interested in that, we could always use the help this year, especially in a year as important as this. So you can check out map.fightbackct.com. You can find my info, you can contact me, or you can find all of our events right there.
Say that again.
Yeah, I talked fast. Sorry about that. So, it's map.fightbackct.com. So,
Maybe David could start. David Lawson is running for state senator against Craig Minor. And David will tell you the 3,000 reasons why Craig Minor has to be. I mean, among other things, he's the co-chair of the Environmental Committee. And he is he an anti-environmentalist, or he's just, he's not neutral? You'll talk, David will tell you. So getting out the vote is the point. So let's run Chris's video.
Hey everybody.
Tell us what to do.
Okay, yeah, I'm not going to be speaking about Craig Minor. He's just a minor problem of mine. But I'm a retired teacher. I taught for 34 years, and I'm very proud of that. Thousands and thousands of people past that I have met, students, parents, other teachers, etc. And in doing so, I knew the concerns then: healthcare, the environment, and education itself. As Mr. Murphy just said, all of these things are under attack. They could be gone. And that's just plain unacceptable. Now, because I am a retired teacher, I just want to assure you, I still have principles. The campaign is going very well. We do have a video out. You can check it on my website or on Facebook. And we will have more to come on issues. But the big thing is getting the vote out. And that takes a lot. We've knocked, well, between the two of us, probably 10,000 doors at this point. But we have to make sure these people come out and vote. It is democracy that's on trial here. And that's, again, unacceptable. So I'm going to leave you with this. We need to keep our skies blue. We need to keep our lakes blue. And we need to keep Connecticut blue. So please join me and vote and keep it going.
So David, which hand do you use in yours?
That I definitely am a right knocker. I had to do it with my left-handed. So for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Maria Horn. I am running to represent all of you in the 64th District. And I wanted to just take a minute actually and to thank Barbara Maltby and Democracy First for all that they have done to be here. It's hard to believe that 2 years ago you guys didn't exist. I wasn't thinking of... Yeah, exactly. That we had gone on to other things, but I certainly wasn't thinking about running for state rep. A lot of you in this room were not thinking about getting involved in politics, and a lot of people, including Jahana, who's in the house. You know, should I just introduce her? Hey, Barbara. We're going to just introduce Jahana now? Or you did? Okay. Yeah, I have more to say.
Hey, Jahana, you're getting a standing. And it started well, it didn't start right here, but it started on August 3rd when for those of us who were, you blew us away. So Jahana hardly needs an intro, but I will say this, you're a comet from Connecticut. When did you start? May? I mean,
When did I announce officially?
Yeah. May 3rd. And look where she is now, a remarkable human being. Chris has got behind her from the get-go, and she's a 3-time Teacher of the Year. Waterbury, the state, and the whole of the U.S. So... And she's ours. Even better. I mean, the way Chris came 12 years ago he didn't come out of nowhere, but same trajectory, and we're hoping the same for you because we absolutely need it, and we know you're going to do it. So, everybody, here she is, Jahana.
Great to be here. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late. This is a huge district. So I'm driving from one side to the other. I've only been at this a little over 100 days. And I have to tell you, what I've learned is that this campaign, this cycle, has restored my faith in people. You know, someone said to me at the very beginning, so I decided I was going to run. Just because I couldn't figure out what else to do. You know, I wasn't frustrated, but I was disappointed. You know, I felt like I had been a classroom teacher, history and civics, and really taught about government and our country and our democracy, and really sent kids out into the world with this thirst to be better, you know, with this obligation to serve. And I left them with the message that the world is waiting for you. And I saw the hollowing out of our institutions, and I felt like I no longer can say this with fidelity and believe it. But then I was left with the question, but what can you do about it? Because I would always say to my students, what, so what, now what? You know, I taught in Waterbury Public Schools. I grew up in Waterbury. I had many students who, like me, had been on the receiving end of aid their whole life. And what I wanted them to know was, no matter who you are or where you come from, you have an obligation and a responsibility to give, to help in your community. And what that looks like is very different for different people, but everybody has the ability to serve. And that's the way I taught, and that's the way I sent kids out into the world. And I got to a point where I was questioning what would wait for them on the other side. And it's like, well, what more can I do? You know, I had a career of service. I had led in my community. I was touching people one person at a time, and for the first time in my life, I felt like that wasn't enough. So I says, you know what? I need a seat at the table. I need a seat at the table because when people say, well, you've never made a law or you've never created a job, I've been affected by those laws. I've been affected by those jobs that have been created. I've been held accountable for the legislation that's being passed. So I too have a voice. And people said to me, but you don't have the political network, you don't have the money, you don't have the reach to make this happen. And what I said then and what I say now is that government is about people. Of the people, by the people, for the people. And when we talk about that fourth branch of government, it's the people who hold the power. And that was my message from the very beginning. You know, if everybody had a voice, if everybody used their voice, if everybody used whatever gift they had to invest in their community and obligate each other, it's not just about our elected officials. And I think that's where we've fallen short. It's not just about electing someone and sending them off to do the job. It's about electing someone and then helping them do the job. About staying engaged and staying connected and staying in our communities and holding leaders accountable and giving them the information that they need to legislate effectively on our behalf. And it's about the people who have been entrusted with that responsibility to listen and be the voice of the people that they represent. I'm a really good listener and a really good voice of people. And I says, I think I can do this. And 100 days, well, actually, we're a little bit farther now, almost 4 months now. I set out on this path to see, do other people feel this way? And I say the answer to that is yes. Other people feel like, not so much I've had enough, but I know that we're better than this. I know that this is not who we are. I know that we are not going to relitigate what we already fought for. You know, as I'm thinking, in the last 3 weeks, just, I say, you know, the universe is not fair. Because generally in an election, you have one issue. I'm like, seriously? This is my first election. I have to deal with every issue? Every single issue. But as a history teacher, I know enough to know that we already litigated women's reproductive rights. We already fought for it. It's already been promised to us to give to our daughters. Why are we relitigating it? We've already litigated, you know, equal access to opportunity in our schools. Why are we fighting those same battles? You know, we are a country that was built on the backs of immigrants, that welcomes immigrants to our shores and provides robust pathways to citizenship. Why are we now looking at this as if it's a foreign concept? You know, we are a country that, you know, honors our veterans, you know, where people can earn a living and invest in their future and be assured that that future is going to be waiting for them. This idea of separating people into groups, where one group is more important than the other, where all you care about is yourself. Let me tell you something. I understand that in a way that is so profound. I worked my whole life. You know, I came from nothing. I had no name, no legacy, no money, no anything. And I just thought, if I work hard and give my kids a better life, I'll be so much happier. And I did that. I worked hard. And my life got better, and my kids' life got better. But then I looked around me and I says, my life being better is not enough. I want my neighbors and my friends to have a better life. I want my community to thrive. Because that's who we are. That's the connectedness that makes us Americans. So this idea of every man for himself, and it's not my problem, it's not my responsibility. Our communities, our country, our future is all of our problem. You know, that's what makes us different. That's what separates us. You know, I woke up last week and the last time I was here, I told you. And this is why I know that this is the time I'm supposed to be running for office. Because my absolute in this campaign, the thing that I said I would never move on, was arming teachers. That right now, we have an administration who thinks that it is responsible to take federal funds away from educational resources to put guns in the hands of teachers. I'm going to repeat this because it's worth repeating. I worked in a high school with 1,300 kids where we lacked resources, where we were trying to make sure that teachers had what they need to stand in front of kids and educate them, that they had the supports and the mentoring to be able to stand there and deliver the most effective instruction possible. That was already a hike. We did it with limited resources, we did it with limited support, but we did it. So now to say that it is responsible to expect a teacher to secure a firearm in a building with 1,300 kids, who's having that conversation that begins, I thought my desk was locked. I don't know how your daughter got a hold of that. I'm sorry that your son was hurt by that. Nothing about arming teachers is responsible, is academically sound, will make our schools or our communities safer. This is just not common sense legislation. This is not common sense leadership. So we have a responsibility, and I said it, not to fight back, but to fight forward. To say to leaders, you need to understand how that affects me and my community, how that affects the people around me, how it affects the people that you serve. And the only way to say that is to vote. The only way to do that is to get out. The only reason I'm standing here in front of you. Going into the election, every poll had me behind. And I said, you're not polling the right people. I'm going to tell you what, and this is how I'm going to close. I said, you're not polling the right people. Because in my mind, I had this crazy idea that if we expand our electorate, if we begin to look at this party differently, if we start to welcome in new people with new ideas, with diversity of thought, with diversity of experience, from different backgrounds, if we start to say this is what democracy looks like, and everybody has a place here. So if we start with candidates with fresh perspectives and fresh ideas, and then we take that concept one step further and invite voters with fresh perspectives and fresh ideas, who had never voted in a primary, who weren't even registered, who were not engaged, die-hard Democrats and hadn't been following along, and said, even you have a place here. Let me teach you how to engage. Let me explain to you why it's important. Let me show you that your voice matters. If we did that, so we do those two things, and then they see the results of their work by seeing the candidate they supported, that's me, on the ballot. Imagine what we can do with that. You know, I have a group of young people who I know will be engaged voters for life because they saw what happened when they work hard on a campaign, when they ask questions, when they canvass, when they phone bank, when they vote. They saw what that means. So we've got 59 days to do it all over again. So what I'm going to say to you and what I'm going to say to every audience I get in front of between now and November, make it your project to find a person who otherwise would not have voted, who says, I'm not involved in politics. Guess what? Yes, you are. Because whether you're voting or not, it's happening without you. Whether you're at the table or not, decisions are still being made that will affect you. Whether you pay attention or not, government goes on. Remind them why it's important that they engage. Teach them how to engage. Share the issues with them. Share the candidates with them. Let them know that their vote matters, their choice matters. Empower them to be active. That's the only way we take this back. That's the only way we flip the House. That's the only way we put government in check. That's the only way we save the soul of this country, is by voting. Every election, every time, at the state level, at the local level, at the federal level, every single time. vote. That's it. You know, I say this because I know it works. I believe it. Government works. Government worked for me when I needed it, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that it is sustainable, that it works for the next person that needs it, and then that they can pour into it so that it works for the person after them, because that is who we are. That is what Americans do. That is what Democrats do. So thank you so much for having me. We got 59 days to do it again. We have amazing candidates. Listen, our gift to you is we gave you an amazing slate. All you have to do is vote.
We've been at this for a while. Yes, exactly. It's nice to have Jahana in the house.
Somebody loves to canvas. I'm a crazy canvasser.
I know a few of those, actually.
Yeah.
So back to,
So lucky to have Jahana running to represent us here and David running to represent us here. And I just wanted to go sort of speak a little bit to the moment we're in, which is, Democracy First 2 years ago didn't exist. And when I declared my own candidacy in front of this group, in this room, in February, so I'm a little ahead of you, but not much. It sure doesn't feel like, it feels like it was yesterday. And at that time, I talked about how the election of 2016 created a wave of activism, of collective activism. And in fact, it included all of the people in the room who, as Barbara said, got involved in issues. You signed up to learn more and advocate on health care, on immigration, on living wage, on making sure our schools and our training for jobs was good. And now I feel we are in a different moment now. Now we're in the undertow of a new wave in which we are pulling together our forces, and as Barbara also said, we need to focus on one thing, which is November 6th, the election. And this is an election where we have the opportunity to bring in a whole new range of representatives, including Senator David Lawson, Congressional Representative Hayes, and me. So what we all need to do now is work together to make sure that we are focused on that goal in everything we do. We all need you out there on phones. We need you on doors. We need you writing letters to your friends, to your neighbors, to people, anybody in your community, and telling them why you are here. And that goes back to the issues that you've been fighting for all this time, because they all line up with what we are all fighting for, which is to make sure that we invest in things, in people and programs that are going to help the state of Connecticut grow. And that we do have a budget mess in Connecticut because our legislature and our government has not paid its bills for decades, and that's a bit of a problem. So we need some new approaches. But that just means we have to go back to the simple math of making sure that every single tax dollar is invested in those people and programs that work. Affordable, accessible health care, high-quality schools, jobs that pay a living wage, the environment, our small businesses and farms that depend on that environment for their own existence. So we need to get out there every day and fight for those things, and I ask all of you to join all of us. It's fun, it's energizing, and as Jahana said, it's hard, bring a friend. It's hard, but it's fun. It's fun, let's stick with fun. Wear good shoes. Yes, wear good shoes, and please show up in November. I'm sure there are lots of sign-up sheets here available for people to sign their names to, and I know many of you have been doing this already, and we are so deeply in your debt for everything you're doing. I am so moved every day by the people who show up, who've never knocked on a door before, who've never written a letter to the editor before, who've never done any of these things, and they're doing it and putting themselves in uncomfortable situations, talking to neighbors that they've been afraid really to engage with politically for years, and they're having those conversations. They're saying, no, that's not right. We're going to change this. So with all of you, we're going to bring another wave of growth and power and optimism that's going to come crashing down on November 6th, and it's going to carry all of us with it, so that our values are the ones that get represented in Hartford and in Washington. Thank you.
David wants to say something else, and then maybe you would all take a few questions.
Okay.
Would you be willing to do that? I'd also mention something you haven't, neither of you said, which is on 2020. What's it called?
Redistricting.
Redistricting. Yeah, sorry, Marie.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. So in
All the many issues, the substantive issues we've all been working on, there is a really important one, which is the 2020 census. If that sounds boring, it's not. First of all, it's been in the news recently because the Republicans are monkeying with it and trying to figure out how to eliminate people from it. So what happens after that census, that gives, based on that census, the state legislature has the ability to redraw the lines, not just the state lines, but the congressional lines. So if the Republicans take control of the state legislature in 2018, they're going to do what they have been doing all over the country, which is gerrymandering districts so that it's not possible for a Democrat to win them. And that means, we know that because they have been doing it today, and that means why, when you read the news about how, in order for Democrats to flip the House, they don't have to have a simple majority, they have to win by up to 11%. That's because of all those districts that have been created around the country that make safe Republican districts. So this is another critical reason why we have to keep our state house, it hangs in the balance. It's an 18-18 tie in the Senate, and it's a 9-vote Democratic majority in the House. Keep it blue. This is bedrock democracy. So, please, vote.
Thank you. Okay. First of all, I want you to know that all of us, we've read a lot of history, we've taught a lot of history, and together we're going to make history.
That was great, but don't go anywhere. Questions from the audience? I can't believe they're. Oh.
What is the best way to financially support this slate?
This group cannot fundraise. We can.
Jahana can.
No, wait a minute. Well, here's the thing. We cannot. It's in this room because Democracy First. It's hosting this. Fundraising questions will have to take place outside those doors. I'm so sorry, but I think it kind of makes.
Actually, can I respond to that
Yeah.
without answering the question? Well, first of all, I think the fact that you have to raise so much money to be a viable candidate is obscene. You know, I came into this race with no money. And even after the convention, I came out with 49% of the vote, which I thought was tremendous as a first-time candidate who had announced 13 days prior. And then I was told, but now you need $1 million. And I'm like, seriously? And I said that system, by design or default, eliminates so many people who could do a tremendous job. Because first you say, I have to have a political network, and then you say, and either I or my network of friends has to be able to financially fund this campaign. That's not what it should look like. You know, and then you have, literally, so up until my first filing, which was June 30th, there was this hesitation, is she viable? Is she viable? Which said to me, the only thing you care about is how much money I can raise. There's this whole conversation, but my viability as a candidate was contingent upon the amount of money that I raised. So even though I had this very limited time period with this finite amount of resources in this district, because everybody's raising money, I spent the first month trying to make sure I hit these targets before I could ever even get out in front of anyone. And then the last 2 months, really just all over the district while I was working all day because I can't quit my job because again, I didn't have that $1 million friends. And then, but I said, that's not what this should look like. So that's one of the things that we really need to take a look at, because now we have at the state level, there is some campaign finance reform, but at the federal level, there is not. And when they were saying these races sometimes go up to several $1 million, that's not what should determine or decide who represents us at the federal level. And unfortunately it is the way it is. So, my job was, okay, you have to just get elected, because you can't even begin to address this issue if you're not invited into the room or if you're not sitting at the table. And there are some people who like the fact that it costs so much money. There are some people who will defend that system, for as long as they hold their seats. I am not one of those people. Because in my mind as an educator, I'm thinking, do you know what I could do with that money? Do you know what I could do with $800,000? I don't think you should have to raise that much money. We could talk outside about how you can't give me money. But just that idea, so that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about that I know has to change. Fortunately for me, we got this momentum and, it became part of a national conversation, and I released an ad that really helped me to raise money around it. But it was just, I felt like so much of my time and energy was spent on strategies to raise money. That's not, and a federal seat for representation is every 2 years. So if you have to do this every 2 years, you know how much time is spent fundraising, calling people, and I was in this very tricky place as a new candidate. So I had to introduce myself for the first time to people who had never heard of me, tell them what I have done, tell them why they should vote for me, and then ask them for money. That is not a good conversation to have. Right? So for me, like on my list of priorities and things that are very important to me, campaign finance is one of those things that is very important to me. Because when you multiply the amount it costs by 435 representatives, and then think about all of the programs that are being cut, there is something terribly wrong with that system. Something terribly wrong.
I'll say I'm not going to fundraise you because I can't. But I just want to, there is both David and I run publicly financed campaigns, which means we are not personally raising money for our campaigns, but there's an important loophole to that you all need to be aware of, which is based on Citizens United, which means that you can't, although we cannot accept contributions to our campaign after we have to raise a threshold of money in order to prove that we are viable, smaller threshold than you, much, and then we get a grant from the state. And so we can't take any contributions after that. However, independent organizations can spend as much as they want on candidates. They must file it with the state, so it's publicly available information, so we know, for example, that my opponent received or got the benefit of over $50,000 of independent expenditures in the last election. To compare that, the state grant is about 30. So it's 1.5 times what the state grant is. So it's important to recognize that although Connecticut does a terrific job of limiting the influence of corporate money on politics, there's an important loophole to that, and we need to be aware of that. And we have proposed legislation to shut that down, which I also opposed. Next question.
You can ask that.
Any other questions?
I do. This is just for, okay, this is a state question, so it's just for David and Maria. I know that there is no internal polling that you're doing, at least I assume. So I think it would be great for us to hear what you think the current forecast is with your opponents.
I can answer for myself. I can't for my opponent. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's that teacher voice again. I also have Lawson just in case. I can tell you what my campaign is doing. Although we're not doing, quote, official polling, we have knocked on a variety of doors. And those doors are identified. And I can assure you, I probably won't be coming to any of your doors, because I'm counting on you to vote for me. The doors I do knock on are Democrats that, I vote now and then, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe just presidential elections. Those doors I do knock on. I also go to doors of unaffiliated voters that tend to have a score that I know that I can perhaps persuade them. That's my, quote, internal poll. So the next question is, how's that going? It's going very well. It's going very well. Sometimes it's difficult to tell from people, even when you ask them point blank, will you support me? You know, so we're doing well there. I think the most important thing that we've been stressing is the importance of not just you voting, but bringing along a friend to vote that normally wouldn't. Now, I may be doing a poll later on, as the campaign goes on, to identify, where we're at. But we're in good shape. Does that answer? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Just my quick ad, also no poll. I joke with people that my polling goes like this. But there's another part of the poll, which is that, or our read of the response, and that's that you see, for example, Dick's opponent showing up in this district. He never used to show up in this district before. He's afraid. My opponent and his supporters, I'm seeing people are passing along to me threads on social media in which they're shocked that I have lawn signs in Canaan. They're afraid. So,
I'll just say, even though you didn't ask for my opinion in this point, just because I am a part of everyone's poll. Go figure. But for me, it's a little different because I've had people say to me, so every poll coming in said that I could never do this, but again, I don't trust the polls because in 2016 they promised me something that did not happen. So I'm at a point where like a woman, I was in Newtown the other day at the parade, and a woman said to me, I'm a Republican, but I support you. And I said to her, you don't need to say but, because I think that there are people who, this idea that people are aligned right down a party line. Even Republicans are saying, I don't agree with these policies. I don't agree with this, what is happening. There are independents, there are Democrats. So we really have to say, what are the issues that we can coalesce around? Because this idea is, if you're a Democrat, you're going to vote for me. My own son said to me when I first announced, everyone in my house, I said, at least we have 4 votes in this house. And my son was 18. I said, I'm checking because a lot of my campaign was about voter education. And I says, everybody check to see if you're registered. So I checked his registration, and he's unaffiliated, which means he can't vote in the primary. And I looked at him, I said, what are you doing? I said, well, you're going to vote for your mother, right? And he says, well, it depends on what you're going to do. And I said to him, in this house, you don't vote, you don't eat. But I say that because we have a lot of, and this is what I've learned through this campaign, I've had a lot of millennials and young people. Many of them did not declare a party because they are not happy with the tone and the pulse in parties. And they're going to make you work for their vote. And they'll take their vote with them. So I have 20-somethings on my campaign who have voted both Republican and Democrat, sometimes in the same year. On one line for a Republican, on one line for a Democrat, because they want to know, on this issue, where do you stand? I had someone come over to me, which I thought was so bizarre. A physician in Newtown came over to me and said, when you are elected, this is the way he started the statement. Mind you, he was a Republican. Had on a t-shirt of one of the candidates and all of these stickers, was clearly working on one of the campaigns. He said, when you are elected, promise me you won't let them gut Obamacare. I'm like, dude, you're working for the wrong side. So people are really talking about issues, which makes it very difficult. I think it's just very different than it's been in the past, where, this is a traditionally Democratic voter. I think now we're at a point where people are so passionate about specific issues, and they want to know will you defend my beliefs? Will you fight for, the environment? We have a government right now that is attacking so many of our basic and fundamental beliefs. And I think people are stepping outside of party lines and saying, no, this is too important to me to take a gamble on. So what I'm committed to doing is, no matter what comes at me, no matter what this campaign season begins to look like, I will not run a negative campaign. I will not run a reactive campaign. I will not run a campaign that makes any person feel like their values or their beliefs are not warranted or worthy of at least a conversation or a discussion. You can disagree without being dismissive. My whole adult life, I've had to lead by example, and I always say, is this something I would say in front of my students? Is this something that I'd be embarrassed to defend tomorrow if it were printed? And if I can't with fidelity always have an answer that I'm proud of, and I think that's what this election season has to be about, and that's what I'm committed to, and that's an idea that Republicans, Independents, Democrats can all agree on. We need to bring some civility back into this conversation. And every poll that I've had says, and this is where you're breaking through, because you are hopeful and you are positive. So this has to be an election about who we can be, not where we are, not, I have an opponent who could not be more fundamentally different than me. Like he is the Republicans don't even recognize him. He is a hyper, as far right as it goes, Everything he's saying is in direct contrast to what I'm saying. So my idea is to have a message that breaks through. He said, if you can't afford college, you shouldn't go to college. It is the states and local authorities should be able to decide if they should arm their teachers. If you have to declare childcare as part of your campaign, then maybe you shouldn't be running for office. I'm like, all of these things are fundamentally different than what I believe in. So I just have to find enough people, a majority of people who share that fundamental belief and are willing to cast their vote for me.
More questions. So this leads in really well to what I've been thinking about, and that is it's easy to speak to all the people who love you when you're a candidate, but when you're an incumbent, which I believe you will be, how do you assure? You're representing everybody then. You're not just representing Democrats or the independents or unaffiliated that have voted for you, and people often vote one way because of fear.
Right.
And I love the way that you talked about that you will focus on issues. And so I'm wondering, what is the best way for all voters to hear where you stand on issues compared to your candidates? Are there debates coming up that we might be able to invite our friends who we think might not be inclined to vote for you, but who we can bring to that forum to really hear where you stand on the issues compared to your opponents?
Yes, there are several debates coming up. I think right now there's 4 that are planned. All of them are in October, and I try to, when we get the dates, try to do a really good job of publicizing them, of running ads in the paper, of sharing on social media. But to your first point, how do I assure people who don't love me when I walk in the room that we can still work together? I've already done that. When I was the National Teacher of the Year, one of the things I had to do was I came out of the classroom and I traveled all over the country. And a platform of equitable access to education, about diversifying the educator workforce, and improving outcomes for students. 2016 was a very tumultuous year. There was a lot of change, there was a lot of transition in the Department of Education. And I remember one incident very clearly. I went into a room and it was a few days after the election, and there was this, it was supposed to be an education conference, but all of the conversation leading up to that was, this is the longest running Republican state, and finally we can make some real change. And it was a very tense and negative room. And I went in and I said, I'm here because I care about kids. Do you care about kids? Then let's have a conversation. And I walked out of that room and we did something that literally, I did more work in that state surrounding, the education of children on reservations And I'm so proud of that work because it's something that we're duplicating all over the country. But I had to remind people, we are here because we have work to do. We are here because we have a problem to solve. And I did that in every state. You know, I was Teacher of the Year, and I stepped into this platform where all of these things that I had no control, I'm lack. I say that because when I was named National Teacher of the Year, the first article that was written about me, the National Teacher of the Year is a minority or something, and I'm like, and she's a great teacher. There was nothing written about teaching. So every group that had any agenda wanted to connect it to me. And I said, no, I have to teach whoever comes in front of me. I have to deal with any parent who is in my space. I don't get to pick and choose and separate people into groups and say, I work harder for this group than for this group. You know, this is the profession that I'm in. You know, when you're a teacher, especially in a public education system, you meet people where they are. So whoever comes to your door, whatever their ideas, their background, their experiences, their education level is, it is your job to figure out how to connect with them. I don't see legislating as any different than that. You know, I've had kids in my classroom, when I'm talking about politics to a 17-year-old, who are regurgitating what they're hearing at home, sharing their parents' ideas. You know, and some of those ideas are so incredibly damaging. But I don't get to say that. You know, what I can do is, these are all the facts. Let's sit down and critically analyze them. Let's come up with some solutions. Let me give you another side to defend, even the one that you don't agree with, and force you to double down and find the information. And then 2 years later, I see these kids live as young adults who form their own opinions and their own thoughts and are looking at facts. You know, I've had students that I taught that say, I didn't know you were a Democrat. Because I never was able to say that. It was, this is the issue, this is the evidence, let's sit down and figure it out. That wouldn't be any different. And I'm committed, no matter what happens, to continuing in that line of thought. So we're going to share, we'll send out emails, we'll send out mailers, so if you're on our email list, we'll make sure that everyone gets any upcoming, like we've been very good with saturating social media with information, because I want people to hear what I have to say. And see beyond just, you know, this new candidate, you know, no, it's about issues that affect people.
And I just want to say, for a local debate, both Maria and David will be, there's supposed to be a local debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters in the Lakeville Journal on October 12th, 7 o'clock at Housatonic High School, and I really encourage everyone to write that down and show up. There'll be a couple of, there may be a couple of other debates if our opponents agree, but that's the one that so far is on the schedule for the local race.
Thank you.
And I'm Jill Drew, by the way, I'm Maria's campaign manager, so just wanted to let you know. If you have a lot of opportunity for you to volunteer or get lawn signs or whatever, so just see me after.
Yeah, we do have an October 12th, but I can assure you right now, everything I'm for, my opponent is against.
Yes.
End of it.
If I could dovetail on that, I could use my teacher voice too, but I spent a lot of time listening to and thinking about national politics. Horrified. But I did know a lot less about state politics, because I always sort of was like, oh, that'll take care of itself, it'll be fine. Starting to realize that's maybe not the case. So, Jahana, I loved how you said, this is my line in the sand, this is my one bedrock issue, I will not be moved on this. So I have a question for David and Maria. What is your one, I will not be moved on this is what I will stand on to the day I die issue?
I apologize, because I have many. I'm serious. There are a lot of major issues going on that need to be addressed, and need to be addressed in the right way. I'm very much for education, and I'm not just talking elementary and secondary. okay? But I'm also talking at the collegiate level to make college affordable and accessible for everybody, period. Medical care. I don't even know where to start with that one. But the assault on medical care is unacceptable. It needs to be expanded, if nothing else. And then in our northwest corner, it's beautiful. The environment is drop dead gorgeous. We know that. But once it's gone, it's gone. So I have many, and I apologize for being that way, but I have many issues that are true to me. And I think bottom line is, we need to invest in our people. We need to invest in our young people. And as Jahana said about government programs, I too am indirectly a beneficiary of government programs. My father, who was a World War II veteran, had a very good GI Bill. He went to the University of Illinois, where Obama spoke yesterday, just saying. And he went on. And then in the 50s, he got a professional job. We were in debt after World War II, huge debt. But this country invested in their people. This country invested in their infrastructure. The whole interstate system was constructed. If we choose to do this, and we should, I believe that we will move forward very well in a couple of years. It's not going to happen overnight, but it can happen, and it should happen.
There are a host of issues too, but if I'm going to be honest with you about the issue that got me involved in politics as an 18-year-old, and that sent me to my first 4 or 5 marches, and that turned me into a Democrat out of a Republican family, it's women's reproductive justice. Because I saw how it affected the young women that I knew and went to school with. I saw when I was in law school and did clinic defense work, I could see how it affected, the differential that you can say you have access to it, but if you don't have, if it's 100 miles away and you have to stop working for 2 days, you don't have access to it. If you have huge, deductibles that you got to pay to get there, you don't have access to it. So all these little burdens that we put away, and I tell you, I'm afraid as much of Kavanaugh overturning Roe v. Wade as I am by them hollowing it out. Yeah. And the state of Connecticut, thankfully, does have a law on its books that codifies Roe, but it's just a law. And that means that if the legislature changes hands and you watch what's happening at the federal level, that could be gone. And that affects, any number of rights through them all. And so that, for me, is better.
Just a word for people who are of a certain age who remember that our only birth control method available above the table was our mother's striking the fear of God into us. Or at least my mother did. Of course, I didn't say anything to her, but I had to go to Queens to a doctor that nobody knew. So some of us have been there in those days. I think maybe this is the time to thank our fabulous, fabulous candidates. They will be They will probably be, here to mingle with you for further information, except for that one thing that shall not be said. That can go on outside the room. So thank you all for coming. But we know what our work is. That's really why we're here. We have got to get the vote out in November. And I've been having both canvassed and phone banking, but nonetheless, if you can't walk the streets, which turns out to be pretty damn interesting, although we went to a place in Philadelphia for Obama when the sign outside the house said, "My dog can get to this gate faster than you can close it." Certain houses are to be avoided. Anyway, please do everything you can to get everybody you know to vote and get those absentee ballots for, in this area, lots of people go to Florida of a certain age, so make sure they get their absentee ballots.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's not, people always say, how can we get involved? It's not just canvassing and phone banking. You know, I spent a lot of time leading to the primary up in the northwest corner because there were a lot of people who vacate second Tuesday in August, really reminding people that you can fill out an absentee ballot. There are lots of young people who are away at school who can vote in their district by absentee ballot. You know, you can phone bank from anywhere. You don't have to be in a headquarters. You can do that in your own home. Sharing information, talking about the candidates, just putting positive energy into the air. People said, "I can't vote for you," then pray for me. I don't know, like, whatever. But it's this way where everyone has a part here. You know, I had people who walked into my headquarters and after about 30 seconds, I was like, "Yeah, I don't want you on the phone. You're passionate, but not that nice." You know, well, this woman said, "I like being by myself." Okay, fine. We gave her a computer and she entered data. But give people meaningful, you know, projects that they can be a part of. Don't ask someone to do something that they're not capable of doing. So, you know, recognize your audience. And I would say that to people. I have people come in, I'll write postcards. Or, you know, I'll send these letters. Or there's so much work running an effective campaign. So there is something for everyone. You know, bake a cake and invite people over your house, trick them, and then start talking about me. But just the idea is to make it important. Keep the election central. Don't let people lose sight of how important it is. Don't let people forget the work that we have to do. You know, and wake up the second week in November. Oh my God, was that last week? No, just keep talking it up. Keep reminding people. You know, talk about it in the grocery store. You know, put a sticker on your car. Maria, wearing a sticker on your car. Whatever, just to, you know, but just to keep it at the top of people's inbox. And that's what I would say to everyone. You know, it's not just about phone banking and canvassing. It's about reminding people that elections have consequences, that democracy matters, that your voice is important. You know, when I meet people, I say, "You wouldn't want me to lose by one vote, would you?" You know, that could be you. So make sure. On election day, I had a woman, really quickly, she's 59 years old, and I registered her. We registered her to vote, and called her on election day that morning to remind her to vote. And she went to vote. And then she called me after she voted, and she said, "I voted." And then she started to cry, because she said, "I had no idea that I was going to feel this after I did." 59 years old, had never voted in an election. So just something like that, calling somebody on the morning of and reminding them, "Do you have a plan? Tomorrow's the day. Let's do it. You know, I'll call you when I get up." And putting it on your calendar to make a point to call someone, to remind them that this is important. Just keep this election as one that's important. You know, and remind yourself, remind your friends, just keep saying this is important. Because elections have consequences, and not all of them are good. Like, this is a good consequence of the last election, but everyone is not so much. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Can I just say that what is being manifest here with people showing up for each other, these candidates showing up for each other, between now and November, we have to all pull together with our groups. And I just learned that there is a climate change protest going on in front of the White Hart in Salisbury at 11. So if you guys are fired up about this and you want to represent, you can do that. We're also door knocking in Norfolk this afternoon at noon. And if you have some time, come see me. We got T-shirts and lots of stuff for you to canvas. So just wanted to.
Yeah.
Thank you.